So, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on humanitarian careers peacebuilding. I can see that people are just coming in to the session. So as you're coming in, feel free to put your name and where you're joining from in the chat. It's always really nice to know who's in the audience. And then we will get started in just a moment. This webinar is part of our Humanitarian Careers series. It's the third one that we've had in this series so far. We've had one on water and sanitation and hygiene, and one on communications. And you'll be able to find the recordings of those ones on our website if you're interested in looking those up as well. And we're planning to have many more too. So do look out for future ones. Thank you. Oh, I can see people typing into the chat. Keep those coming in so that we can see where you're coming in from. Right, and I think we will get started, and I'm sure a few more people will join as we get going as well. So, peace building is actually a topic that I know very little about, so I'm as interested as everybody else in the audience to hear from our three speakers today about their career paths in this area and the kind of skills that they've needed to pick up along the way and the experiences that have helped them to excel in this field. And so we're going to hear from our three panelists about their kind of personal career stories, and then we're going to have a bit of a discussion at the end. So I'm not going to give away too much at this point. I'm not going to tell you too much about their careers because that is what they are going to talk about. But just to introduce our three panelists, so we have Oluwasegun Ogunsakin, who is a project manager at Bellwether International in Nigeria. We have Safiya Ibn Garba, who's an independent peace builder, until recently worked for Generations for Peace, and has now got her own peacebuilding consultancy. And we have Toufik Naili, who works for the Centre for Competence in Humanitarian Negotiation. So three very different angles, I think, on the peacebuilding topic, and three very different career paths as well. So welcome, the three of you, and thank you so much for agreeing to join this webinar. And this is just a quick overview of the agenda. So we're going to have shortish presentations from our three speakers. And then, as mentioned, we'll have a panel discussion and Q&A at the end. So that will be your chance to ask your questions. So do think about what questions you want to ask the three speakers as we go through. A little bit of housekeeping. So you'll see that we've got the Q&A feature. That's the best place to put your questions as we're going along. That means they don't get lost in the chat and we can find them easily. So please do type your questions in there and then we'll get to them at the end. Please keep your questions and comments respectful and on topic, as I know you would anyway. And if you do want to see captions in your own language, you can access those by clicking more at the bottom of your screen and then going to show captions and selecting your language. So you should be able to get captions in almost any language if you look on there. Now, we've threaded through this webinar today. We have a few little exercises to get to know our audience better. It's really nice to kind of build an understanding of who we're speaking to and kind of get to know each other's perspectives a little bit. And so Safiya has kindly shared some of the exercises that she uses as well to enable people to kind of start to build that understanding of each other's perspectives and come to understand each other. So the first question here is, tell us about an animal that symbolizes peace in your context or country, and why does it represent peace? So feel free to put any answers in the chat. I'm really intrigued to know what people are going to say about this. An animal that represents peace. Well, Carman says dove. Alex says parrot. And also, it doesn't have to be one of the 4 animals here. Absolutely not. Those were just example animals that I put there. A sheep. Yeah, and for me, it's a dove. And I wasn't aware of any other animals that symbolize peace in other cultures, which is why I'm so interested in what other people are going to say. Duck, panda, column. Very interesting. Great, thank you. We'll keep those coming in because we're all very interested to hear other people's answers on that. And as you do that, I'm going to hand over to Safiya, who's going to be our first presenter. Just let me know when you want me to change the slides, Safiya, as you go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Very interesting inputs and examples. I think I've seen a couple of animals I did not even know existed. So thank you for sharing those. And welcome from all over the world, morning, afternoon, evening. And really, really honored to be on this webinar hosted by the HLA. I'm a big fan of HLA, actually. And it's really a privilege to be able to be speaking to you. Next slide, please. So just by way of a very quick introduction, um, I'm Safiya Ibn Garba. I'm a Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellow. So if you see DTRF, that's what it means. I'm also a doctoral candidate at the UN-mandated University for Peace in Costa Rica. I'm the convener of the Kabyle in Africa think tank, initiator of the 3Ps. I'll speak a little bit about that later. Honored to be a peace builder and thought leader, certified learning development and curriculum development professional. I'm just reading off what's actually there. I'm a certified endorsed facilitator, keynote expert speaker, effective consultant, and very, very interested and engaged in practice of organizational assessment, growth, and development. I lay these out just to kind of show a little bit of a range of the kinds of things you might be able to do even within a career in peace building, and to kind of just give, an idea of scope and possibilities. Next slide, please. So we'll jump into it and very quickly go through the journey. And it's a long journey, okay? It's been over 2 decades, almost getting to 25 years now of the work that I've been doing. And no, that's not an excuse for you to try and guess how old I am. So started off with my parents being educators. If you know anything about Nigeria, you probably know a little bit about education statistics, especially when it comes to the north as opposed to the south and broadly, when it comes to education data and the disadvantaged part, not because there aren't resources there, but just simply how things work. But my parents were, they're very, very committed to education and made sure to pass that on to us. Eventually, my mom became widowed very young, and also very young for myself, but she's got fire in her bones and she's still going. And she raised 3 girls on her own. Again, I'm taking you through this journey both on a personal and professional level, because some people might think, well, the odds are against me. The odds are against a lot of us, but it's also about the nurturing environment and the values that you have even right from beginning. I was driven by a need to serve humanity, and that was also through my experience in my context, and seeing what was happening. Like, for example, being able to go to school when others couldn't, or at least having that push to want to go to school. In 2008, I founded Empowering Women for Excellence Initiative, and that initiative is designed to provide multi-sectoral interventions for the development and empowerment of girls and women. And we do that through capacity building, information dissemination, and cross-cutting community service projects. And we're very proud. It's been 15 going to 16 years now of that. We're extremely proud of that. And because of that work that we started in 2008, I was invited to a camp in Jordan with Generations for Peace, an international peace building organization. I became a volunteer delegate, and I started incorporating peace building into EWEI's programs. And in the first range of things that we did, we reached over 8,500 girls, women, and youth. Eventually, I was invited to serve as a staff at the headquarters in Amman, Jordan. I started there. That was in 2012. I started as an officer there, and I've just ended my career there after 12 years, 16 of volunteering, but 12 as a staff member, as the Senior Director, Global Programs and Learning. And that meant I was responsible for the programs and institutional learning departments. And that cuts across peace building programs and contexts in 52 countries. I started a little bit to touch consultancy practice even before the end of career, but now fully going into that. And that's kind of been an overall of the journey. And as you can see that it's been influenced by personal experiences, influenced by the decisions I made with my education. My first degree is in computer science. Second is in sustainable peace in the contemporary world. And as I said, now a doctoral candidate with UPeace in aeronology, which is peace studies. Next slide, please. Okay, so I put in this graphic because I want you to know that it's not a straight road and it's not an easy road. And sometimes you will come to the roundabouts, or as Nigerians like to say, roundabouts, in the course of your journey. You might start off in something so excited, and you are going to meet bumps ahead. They're going to be mountains, they're going to be valleys, and going around sometimes even. And then at some point, you find your way again and you keep moving on. And this is something that continues like that. And I think even throughout our careers, that is the case, that we will have times when we're thriving, but it's still a journey of self-discovery. All right. Now, some of the wins, I think, in the course of the my career path has been the fact that I've been creating impact. And that's incredibly important to me. I really, I think Shego mentioned it another day, and something I usually say to my team members, this is passion work. So if you are driven by that need, it becomes a win for you. It's also been a journey of personal growth and recognition. So in the course of my work, I've been awarded, I've been recognized, but what really, really matters the most is when you talk to someone who has been engaged in something you've contributed to, an activity, a training, whatever. And that person has really come to a place of better understanding and more empowerment. It's a feeling like no other. And it's also been a time for personal growth. So in the course of my career, I did my master's, I'm doing my doctoral. Another win for me has also been the global footprint. I'm so, so blessed and privileged that I have networks and connections across these many countries around the world. And that also has affected me, myself, becoming a peace builder and dealing with stereotypes and things that I have maybe thought, read in the media, and so on and so forth. So I have found that one of the greatest wins for me has been really developing into a peace builder and peace building myself with other and across other cultures. Of course, challenges, as I've said, it's hard work. It is hard work. No, no joke about it. Technically, if you really want to do peace building, it's hard work. It affects you mentally and emotionally. And I say here, especially when your own context suffers. So if you come from a conflict affected or fragile state, you also know what it means to hear news. Like sometimes you even dread to hear certain news from home because you are personally affected. It's also sometimes very context specific, the challenges. They're maybe unable to carry out activities, or crisis has broken out. There's been an episode of direct violence. And so that is, and it could be a range of things. Also proving myself with each new role, because in the course of, say, in the past 12 years, I've held about 6 different roles, and all of them were created especially for me because of the growth that was happening and also what they thought I could do. And that means with my intersectionality of identity, I also had to prove myself with each new role. Next slide, please. All right. So, what are the competencies, skills needed? Competencies, of course, are knowledge, skills, and ability. One of them is genuine care and interest. So, if this is what you're thinking about, this is something I might want to do, you need to care and have interest. It's not something you can do without having that. You obviously need to have the technical knowledge. So, go do the courses, go to study, know what it is you are talking about, because this is a particularly sensitive sector. You also have to be analytical, influencing. You must be able to kind of be able to convince and influence others positively, obviously, but understanding that in the space of peace building, it is all about attitudes, perceptions, interests, needs, and so on. So you need to really have that skill, and you can develop those skills. You can develop those competencies. Once you get the technical knowledge, you're applying them, you are going to grow. And speaking of growth, you need a growth mindset. Peace building is particularly unique because it is not linear. And for you to be able to catch up with all that is going on, you need to have a growth mindset, both on a personal level and for the things you are involved in. And lastly, I mentioned, and this list is obviously not exhaustive at all, you have to have patience. And that sometimes is the journey for you as a peace builder, to have the patience, to understand why someone will refuse to come to a session and you can do nothing about it because you are a peace builder. Next slide, please. So, if you are, excuse me, pursuing a career already or you're thinking of it, in addition to those competencies, you again want to build competencies, as I've mentioned, and you want to start somewhere. You want to start small. Okay. You are not, hello, going to make a big change from beginning. It doesn't work that way. I was reading in one of the courses recently that even post-conflict state building and reintegration and so on could take 20 to 40 years, depending on what is happening in that context. So start somewhere, start small. Start with people in your neighborhood, in your family, in your immediate, in your interventions that you may consider small. Collect and act on feedback. That's one key thing about peace building. It's all about continuing to get responses, participatory and collaborative responses. And those are the things that will help you get better, be more responsive, and actually work towards the objectives you want to achieve. Network, network, network. As they would say, location, location, location. With peace building, it's network, network, network. And those are some things to consider. Next slide. Okay, so there was a quick question about what's next personally. So one of the things I'm already currently doing, and that's part of what we're doing here today, is really trying as much to share the knowledge and the experience of the past 23 plus years through webinars, through courses, tools that I'm working and developing. So if you go to the website, you can watch out for things that are happening. One of my new baby projects is a peace building practice project, which is a 3Ps. And this is around conflict sensitivity and integration, especially in the global south, and making it truly accessible. So going from that high level, top level, bulky documents to what it really means in grassroots peace building and ensuring that what we do, does not do any harm. And we're thinking about the impacts of what we're doing, whatever kind of intervention, humanitarian development or peace building. Thirdly, I think is the major ones are, I obviously want to graduate in my doctoral, so I want to make sure that that is done as soon as possible. My research interests are actually focused on participatory arts and bringing women together from different sides of the conflict divide in rural Kaduna State affected by violent conflict. So that will be very interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. These are our contact details. I'm here listening and also learning from my colleagues, and hopefully we'll have more discussions later. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Safiya. That was incredibly interesting. Yeah, I'm particularly interested in what you said about the kind of time frames involved in peace building, and that requirement to, to be working on things that maybe you won't be the one to see the results of, and to have that kind of patience. And it almost seems like more than some other roles, peace building is kind of very much tied up with the kind of personality that you have to bring to it. So I was interested as well that you were saying like some of these things can be learned, because somehow I was kind of in my mind, I was tying it up with a kind of personality type, but it was very interesting that you were talking about how those competencies and skills can be picked up. Great, thank you so much for that. Now, do keep your questions coming in the chat, because we will get to them at the end. And just before we hand over to Shogun, we're going to do another question for those of you listening. So we'd just be really interested to know, what is your biggest anticipated challenge in being involved in peace building? So whether you are already working in peace building, or it's something that you'd be interested in getting into, what do you anticipate to be the biggest challenge? And we'd love it if you could type your thoughts into the chat. People still letting that settle. Not perpetuating colonialism. It's a really interesting one. Maybe we can get to a question around that in the discussion later. Funding. Great. Okay, well, I'll leave you to percolate on that question. And as you're thinking about it, yes, patience. That was kind of one of the ones that I was thinking about too. Right, so as you're thinking about that question, let's hand over to Oluwasegun, who's going to talk to us about his career path. As mentioned, he's a project manager at Bellwether, but we're going to hear what got him there and where he's heading, and the kinds of skills that he advises that we pick up in order to work in this area. So over to you, Shogun.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. And thank you so much, Esther, for this opportunity to share my stories and also my experience in my journey as a peace builder. Yeah, my name is Oluwasegun Ogunsakin. Currently live in Nigeria. I'm a Nigerian, and I'm currently the project manager for Bellwether International. Yeah, Bellwether International is an organization that are involved in promotion of freedom of religion or beliefs, and also building a genocide-resistant community or society. And we engage with various stakeholders and also local communities in ensuring they have the competency or the need in protection against genocide and also displacement. Yeah, my journey, it's quite a little bit funny because I come from a low-income community in Nigeria, West Nigeria precisely, just like what Safiya said. Actually, I think she's from the northern part of the country, and there's a lot of difference between the south and the north. But irrespective of one's background, I believe that one can get to where you want to get to if you believe in yourself and you trust your inner soul that, yeah, you can do this, you can achieve this, then the mountain will be a minor thing for you to climb. Yeah, yeah, my journey started through my education. I had a degree in psychology from Lagos State University here in Nigeria. After my first degree, there is a 1-year national service that is compulsory for every Nigerian youth that are below 30 years of age, and we call it National Youth Service Corps. And that was where I started my career as probably as a humanitarian. Let me use the word humanitarian because it's about serving the nation. And I was posted to the northwest of the country in Kwara State, where I was posted to a local community to be teaching as a core member. The government call us a core member, whereby you volunteer for 1 year to serve the nation. And from there, I joined a Christian organization that is a core member Christian organization, where I served as zonal secretary, where we go to various local communities to support them in terms of food, in terms of health, and also some other spiritual needs. From there, I have the passion, to engage, to support people, to have a community or a society that is free from crime, that is free from violence, and also that is free from poverty. And so that drives me. After finishing my my National Youth Service Corps, that was in 2015, then I opted in to go for my master's in peace studies and conflict resolution, so that I will be able to be much more equipped, even when going into the field of peace building and also humanitarian services. So after my master's degree, I finished that at National Open University of Nigeria. Then I moved forward to join other non-profit organizations as a volunteer, because sometimes you need to be well experienced for you to be able to deliver properly in the area of peace building and also in the area of humanitarian service. So after some couple of years, in 2020, I joined Teach for Nigeria. Teach for Nigeria, it's a member of a global network called Teach for All. And the mission is to bridge the educational inequality in the world, especially in the global south. Of course, we have Teach for India, we have Teach First UK, we have a Teach for Armenia, Teach for Pakistan, Teach for Nigeria, and so on and so forth. But I belong to the Teach for Nigeria, where I was posted as a fellow, just to the area of ensuring one being able to bridge the gap, and that is one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 4, that is quality education. So I engage in those things for 2 years, and during the course of my being a fellow, I never get tired, because sometimes I want us to know is that in peace building work, you don't go after the money, you go after the passion, and the passion pave way for a greater opportunities. Because the more you look into getting more money from humanitarian work, then you can move beyond where you are. So it's all about passion, give to the community, give to the people. So after during the course of my being a fellow of Teach for Nigeria, I was able to secure a job with Bellwether International. That was in 2021, during the course of being a fellow, because at that time I was teaching in a low-income community in Southwest Nigeria as a teacher, and also supporting local community in terms of humanitarian service, give back to the young girls, and also to local women that are faced with various violence issues. So from being a fellow, I was able to get my career path more as a peace building project manager for Bellwether International. And I would tell you one thing is, the journey is just like what Safiya said about a graph. It's not a straight one. It has to have a lot of loopholes, a lot of galloping, where you need to meddle around for you to get to your career path. And one thing again is, when you are looking forward to venture into developmental work, peace building work, you need to understand yourself. You need to ask yourself, what do I want in life? Because the work of peace building, it's about humanity. It's not about money. It's not about riches. It's about serving humanity and to ensure that we have peace, even from your family to your local community, down to your country. Then you look at the global world in that aspect. So as a project manager, currently we engage in lots of freedom of religion, because our major work is to promote freedom of religion and human rights, especially in the global south. We currently work in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and also in Nigeria and in the UK. We are currently there. So in Nigeria, I'm currently the project manager for Nigeria, where we work with local communities and also with internally displaced people, especially in the northern part of the country, where we provide relief material and also provide humanitarian negotiation opportunities for various factions of people who are involved in conflicts. And this has really been a journey for me, because we've been able to impact so many lives. You know, if you look by the end of the program, you get to see our website. You can go through what Bellwether International has been doing. And I have also been engaging in a lot of partnership work, also with the United Nations Faith for Rights. Currently, my organization will be hosting a symposium in Nigeria, in Abuja, about the United Nations Faith for Rights. And we are going to have a lot of different actors in Nigeria on how we can build, how people can know about their religion, their faith, and how it correlates with the rights, with their rights. And in the United Nations, the United Nations believe in one thing is about building peace, even from the local community. And that was the aspect of the globe local. That is, you go the global, but you operate in the local aspect. So the journey has been good. It's just about you giving yourself to humanity, understanding what do you really want to do in life. Then this will pave a lot of opportunities for you to grow. Meanwhile, before I close this section, meanwhile, being a peace builder needs you to engage in a lot of training. And one of the training I was able to acquire, even the course of there are a lot of training from the Humanitarian Leadership Academy training, and from the United States Institute of Peace, and so on and so forth. But recent, I was able to acquire a skill which will be much more important for anybody looking towards building a career in peace building, and that is the aspect of humanitarian negotiation, and that is provided by the Center for Competency in Humanitarian Negotiation. If you are trying to build a more opportunity in building and also having a stronger partnership with different actors, I would recommend people to go for this particular training. It's a very important one, because it really gives me the opportunity to work with local people, to work with government actors, and different partners in Nigeria. So I think I have to stop here. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Shogun. You've done an excellent segue as well into the next speaker, with your mention of your CCHN training recently as well. And it's interesting to see some of the kind of common threads coming out between you and Safiya, despite the fact that you've had very different careers. You both kind of mention that it's really a career of passion, I guess. And the fact that both of you have kind of started off by, volunteering or, doing something for your own community out of that kind of passion for it. Demonstrates that, that's how you've really built your career on that kind of impact that you want to have. Thank you for that. And so I think I've seen a couple of questions in the chat. I don't see any over on the Q&A, but anyway, keep them coming, and you can either put them in the chat or the Q&A. I know sometimes the Q&A gets a bit hidden, so if you can't see it, just stick them in the chat, and that will be good. And we've got a couple of pictures of Shogun here at work, and then we're just going to move on to one last question for you guys before we hand over to Toufik. So what makes you feel peaceful? What kinds of objects, smells, music, visuals, words, etc. do you associate with peace in your own life? What creates that feeling of comfort? Yoga. Yes, that makes sense. Meditation, being in nature. Oh yeah, I can definitely relate to that one. Music, nature, flowers, birds. Oh, it's making me feel peaceful just reading the list, to be honest. It's interesting how that's such an easy question for people to answer in a way. Everybody kind of immediately can think of something that makes them feel peaceful. Right, so with that, I'm going to hand over to Toufik, who works for the Centre of Competence on Humanitarian Negotiation. Toufik, just let me know when you want me to change the slides. I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yeah?
Yep. Speak up because it is a little bit quiet, but we can hear you clearly, but just make sure you up, that's all.
I raise my voice, yeah. So, yeah, I think, thank you very much, Safiya and Oluwasegun, for your presentation. It's very inspiring to see how your pathways so different, but also very interesting and surrounding around this aspect of building. For me, I would like to carry on this discussion and give one sentence at the beginning before introducing myself. I would say that conflict has made me who I am today. So conflict setting is what Toufik is today, and I will explain why I'm saying this. But before, so I'm Toufik Naili. I'm in charge of the operation at the Center of Competence in Humanitarian Negotiation, and I'm in charge of advising agencies, humanitarian agencies, on developing curriculum around humanitarian negotiation for their learning programs on humanitarian action. And it's a real pleasure to be here and to share this panel with Oluwasegun and Safiya. Next, please, Esther. So just to give you a bit of insight, so I'm originally from Algeria, but I was born in France, and so I'm not quite far away from the countries of Safiya and Oluwasegun in Africa. And but I was born in France. My parents moved from Algeria to France, and basically because of the conflict, after the conflict in Algeria, the situation was not livable at that time, so they had to move to France to migrate and start a temporary life in France to go back to Algeria. But this never happened. They kept on working and having kids and etc. So I grew up there. So that's a bit the first insight to say that the first drive that took me to the life I have is exactly a conflict of 8 years that has a result of lots of people have lost their lives in it. And more is coming in my life, actually, when I'm realizing the session today. But I moved, so I lived in France. I did some studies in languages specifically, and I went into a career into development, and from that to humanitarianism and to learning as well in this sense. You can put the next one, please. So I grew up in France and I studied English and Spanish, and I've always wanted to work outside to meet people. So Peacebuilding exactly is about willing to talk to people, meeting people, understanding them, putting yourself in their shoes, and etc. So I've always wanted this, and I started at the University of Wolverhampton Languages for Business, so specifically on economics, but I was not much telling me around what I wanted to do. So I carried on, and then I started on the next slide on the master on Middle Eastern Studies. This is where I started to go deeper into exploring what is happening outside Europe as well. And I was studying this master at the University of Manchester, where basically specializing in Middle Eastern studies, in history, and understanding the Arab world as well, but as well in learning languages to be able to communicate and to engage in understanding political sciences there, etc. So from the university, then I started my first job, which is the next slide, where basically having that specific language, which was Arabic, took me already in some conflict setting. And my first job that I was proposed after that master was to go to work in the West Bank for the Palestinian local authorities, but within a collaboration between the French and the Palestinian local authorities. So basically was to, after the peace agreement of Oslo in 1994. Lots of French local authorities and French mayor wanted to develop some partnership with Palestinian municipalities and help them in developing the capacity to think of what next, to provide services for the people, and then to start building, or how to say, maintaining that peace effort, and making sure that we reach that ambition in a way. And unfortunately, the situation today is showing us the contrary, but there's always hope in this. So I worked there for about 4 years, and I was in charge of guiding and advising these local authorities to develop these services. And then, but just after 2 years, the conflict caught up. So the second intifada started, and I worked for 2 years within a conflict setting with very hard conditions. And then the shift of the focus from the collaboration we were developing with the Palestinian local authorities was more into emergency helping people and trying to build, to support those people who are affected by the conflict. So I started to get in contact with other humanitarian organizations as well, and the Red Cross, etc. That was my first contact with the Red Cross, and which led me later to that career as well within the Red Cross. But so I stayed there, and I said the
Just
conflict.
to say, sorry, Toufik, do speak up.
Yeah,
speak very loudly.
Sorry, and I was saying the conflict is always around the next step I'm engaging in. So I met my wife also in the West Bank, and she was working for an organization called Seeds of Peace, actually, at that time, and from that time we got married and we have 3 kids. So again, the conflict is there, is pushing me to move forward, and unfortunately it's the conflict, but still it's what I am today. And after that, so in the last 2 years of Intifada, we were resilient, trying to stay still and carry on our work. And then we had no choice to leave, and we were evacuated when the conflict reached a certain danger, very dangerous situation. I think it's maybe my mic that is not working properly. Yeah, let me check if I can change that. Is it better now? Can you hear me better? I think probably it's the second screen that was. Yeah, so from that time I moved into back to Europe, and then I was looking for some job. I went back into developing some studies and academic work on the international action of local authorities to support those local authorities in the South. They used to call it at that time in the 90s. And from that time, I found an opportunity to start working for the humanitarian actors and to join the ICRC. You can show the next slide, please, Esther. And so the idea for me is where I realized that there's a place for me to contribute to helping people in the field, and a bit like what Oluwasegun said, yeah, it's maybe in our DNA, and we need to be there and providing that support in the field for people that are affected by conflict. So I joined one of the most famous organizations regarding conflict and trying to mitigate the impact of conflict, which is the International Committee of the Red Cross. And I worked there, again, in the Middle East for a few years on protection activities and detention activities, and providing support to beneficiaries of humanitarian action. After that, so I kept on working in this, but what was interesting is that from the proper action in the field, I moved into supporting the actions in the field by joining in learning and development activities, a bit like Safiya has been saying. So I was in charge of training humanitarian actors from the ICRC in becoming better leaders in the field and taking better decisions in the field. So I was engaged for 6 years in Jordan, and then a few more years in Kenya, where I worked there for the ICRC in Africa, more specifically. This led me to, at a later stage, in joining the Center of Competence on Humanitarian Negotiation. Again, this learning pathway, so that took me there. But furthermore, this aspect of how we can find practical solutions to conflictual situations through negotiation. How can we find a better way to engage It can be through mediation, it can be through negotiation, but you bring out soft skills that are very essential in peace building. The soft skills I'm going to develop and building relationship with either counterpart or the different actors in the field. So the idea was to join this center and to start developing content and workshop for those who needed this in the field. So I joined this center, and I'm still there. I'm still now engaged in the operations with my team and providing support to agencies on developing further learning programs in negotiation for their own organization. And I'm also very involved in training facilitators. That's why we have Oluwasegun that has taken this training of facilitator in the community of CCHN, which is basically transmitting this methodology that we have developed at CCHN through the community and counting on them to train people in these different activities in the field through different workshops. We have reached today an amount of 8,000 community members that have taken events within CCHN, and we have more than 800 facilitators that are dispatched in the world from Latin America to Asia to Africa to Europe and the Middle East, and giving courses in this different setup on humanitarian negotiation. So yeah, that's yeah. And so most of the work I've been doing, when I go to see people and say, "What do you do?" I say I travel a lot. So I do travel a lot. And when I start telling them where I travel, they get a bit surprised because it's contexts like Haiti, like Yemen, like Mali, like Syria, etc. So this type of travel makes them understand. So what do you do? And I'm engaged in this overall effort of peace building. So it's conflict is all around us. It's from my birth until today, and that's why we have to work with this. And I'm happy to contribute in these different efforts that people are giving throughout the world in peace building, and happy to work not directly, but with Oluwasegun and Safiya as well. So thank you very much. I will stop here. And yeah, what's next for me? I forgot I had this point. Yeah, yeah. Whenever I retire, I hope I'll be able to carry on working in this field and supporting people even pro bono to carry on contributing in humanity. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Lovely, thank you, Toufik. And I guess nothing tells you that it's a career of passion than the fact that you just said, and when I retire, I plan to continue working. I mean, that's a sure sign that you're doing it for the love of it. But it's great to hear that perspective as well, because it's interesting that your career has eventually led you into kind of supporting other people that are doing peace building. And I guess it's interesting for people on the call to understand as well that there are those kinds of like networks and structures and things around peace building where people can get support, and that there's also that kind of professionalization of peace building as well, you know, that there are kind of trainings and certifications and things like that that can help you kind of chart your course through that career.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, we're going to move on to some questions and discussion. Let's have a look what we've got. I saw a really interesting question from Diana earlier, Diana Ishakat, who I believe is herself a peace builder. So this is from somebody who's a kind of a seasoned professional in this sector. And she's asking, I'm curious about the perceptions of others beyond our practice. I often meet people who are completely disillusioned by civil society and peace work. How can we build trust after large power structures destroy it? So this idea, I guess, that we're all seeing things maybe on the news and, you know, we have a feeling that nothing is ever solved, you know, that there's just more and more of this stuff coming, and people kind of lose faith, I guess, in the sort of wider humanitarian sector as well, but specifically also in things like peace building. So has anybody got any thoughts on that question?
I can start.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Diana. And great work you're doing with Peace Begins Here. I can read between, around, and in your words and understand when that happens within even local structures to much more powerful global, power dynamics. And as Esther has said, things that are playing out in the news in our region and beyond. I think that one time-tested approach has always been that people need to feel like they're being listened to. They need that space, not only to be able to speak, but to know that their voices, it's not that cliche, your voices matters. It is that your voices are going to those who need to hear it. There are power dynamics that have been entrenched over the course of, centuries. And I've found that one of the ways to approach this is, number one, provide that safe space for voices, not only to be heard, but that we collectively decide on how we transmit those messages, those key messages that we want to transmit, but also work with the system. And that might seem a bit weird, a little bit, but I believe that working with the system, even where it might be inequitable, might be a way to pass across your message. So practically, that could mean that, okay, if a certain group of people is not listened to find an advocate even within that group of decision makers or policy makers or so on to connect with. As they say, even when you're speaking of conflict divides, there will always be people who are of different kinds of positions, even within a group. So intra-group, there are different kinds of positions. Some are more moderate, some are more and extremist and whatever. So I think working within the system and looking for opportunities to engage with those power structures that have made people lose trust. But first of all, it's the people. Gathering the trust back is providing those spaces. Let people know they're being listened to, and provide an avenue for those voices to be heard with solid recommendations. And I think with time, at least trust will grow with you as an individual or the organization, as opposed to power structures. That's a whole different thing, but you can work through that. I think those are my thoughts. Over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Safiya. Does anyone else want to come in on that question?
Maybe if I can build on this aspect of trust very, very quickly in a short way. And I'm actually working on the design of the content on soft skills now and how to build rapport with your counterpart in negotiation. And this aspect of building trust is an important one. That's what come out from all the interviews we have conducted in the field of humanitarian action. It's an essential part in negotiation. What I would like to bring as a nuance to this is that I think we have to talk about re-bringing trust more than building trust. I think there's always trust there because we have a certain credibility, we have certain history, and there is trust there. We might have lost it, like Safiya has said, but how can we bring it back? That means rebuilding trust for me is really about taking some time to rethink of what was achieved before, what we managed to get in the conversation with others, and what can be used again to re-solidify that trust, or to make it more, how to say, more explicit in the eyes of the two actors in this sense. And sometimes we think there is no trust at all, but it's there. There's a tissue there that we need to exploit, and I think so always being positive and constructive in the sense that there is a way to find that trust, and there is no other way. We have to discuss it with these people, whoever it is. So it has to go through rebringing the trust that was there.
Thank you. I've kind of got a follow-up question as well to those answers. And as I mentioned, I don't have any knowledge really of the peace building sector, so this is just from somebody who's a complete beginner. But I imagine as peace builders that you are kind of working with some of the most difficult stakeholder groups sometimes. I'm thinking organizations that politically people don't engage with, extremists and terrorists and things like that, or groups that are trying to attract maybe people from the communities that you're working with. And I guess I just wondered, how do you approach that, and what are some of the What are some of the tactics that you use to engage with these very difficult groups? If that's a sensible question.
If I may, just as in my past experience within the ICRC, that's the essence of our work. We talk to everyone, so there is no question around it. It has to happen, and that's what our mandate is about. And even the donors cannot specify who we talk to. We can't talk on this. So it has never been a question for us. Those who are acting in this conflict setting are the one we have to talk to. There's no other way. No.
Thank you. Now I'm seeing more questions popping up here. So we've got a question here from Lorna Barker, sorry. How important is your career background or other experience if you're starting out in peace building, i.e. if you know nothing about the sector? So I guess, yeah, how can you get into peace building from a completely different background?
Okay, I think I can answer this. Probably give my own suggestion. Yeah, I remember when I started my career as a peace builder. Even if your background is not in peace building, or probably you didn't study peace or political science or law, stuff like that. Like my background, I studied psychology, and it was totally different because I didn't even really know what does peace building means. But what thing is about ability of you to be tested. If truly you want to go into that field, you test for it. And when you test for it to know more, then you have to come down and you seek for probably a mentor, because I have mentors who really helped me during the course of my career that were able to give advice and also, tutored me in the line of peace building. We have a lot of professionals, that you can easily have, that you can network with on LinkedIn. There are a lot of, professionals there, and also organizations that you can, reach out to for probably to volunteer and also to be mentored by. So this will go a long way, for you to find your path in the field of peace building. It's very important. And I think one of the major errors that people are doing nowadays is that many people don't really know what they are doing in the field of peace building and humanitarian. Some people just find it probably because they have no job. They just want to be there, but the passion, what it takes to be a real peace builder, is lacking. So getting a mentor and also probably volunteer, to learn. Don't look at the money right now. Yeah, I know the money is important, but just give yourself to humanity to serve, get mentor, people who would put you to the path, the right path, then you get what you're really looking for in the field of peace building. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it does sound like volunteering is pretty key, really. It's a great way to get experience, but also I guess it kind of enables you to try something out as well, doesn't it? And see, how you find it and whether you're a good fit for that, because it sounds like it's such a, really challenging area to work in terms of needing to have kind of real tenacity and things like that. Right, I had another question which links to this idea of passion, which you've been talking about. And I'm just thinking, how do you, because it's such a kind of, as you mentioned, such a long-term process that you're always having to work on, some of your goals, are not going to be achieved anytime soon necessarily. And you kind of have to have a lot of faith that what you're doing is building something. Yeah, I suppose my question is around kind of how do you manage to kind of maintain that passion in the long term? And how do you kind of not lose hope? Because some of the things will be outside of your control as well. And I guess you'll sometimes see something going really in the opposite direction to what you had been working towards through no fault of yours. And I'm just wondering how you kind of managed to cope with those types of setbacks, I guess.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Esther, for this question. I would love to say that COVID-19 brought a lot of open doors to many people, even if we have some people that lost their life during the COVID-19, during the lockdown. And I would say that during the lockdown or during the COVID-19 and the emerging of Zoom technology really shows a lot of opportunities because of the aspect of work from home and, opportunities like that. I remember that, sometimes it might be frustrating because it takes a process, to get your feet in the Peacebuilding profession. But what keeps the fire burning in me is this ideology, or this I would say my brain is being wired to learn through various courses that we have. Sincerely, learning is a life. When you learn, it gives you life. When you give yourself to learn, to be mentored, it keeps the fire burning in you. And I think that was what really helped me during the course of the lockdown. I was on various Zoom webinars, pertaining to humanitarian, peace building, and also enrolling for a series of courses, which really build and guide the fire in me. Because if you fail to learn, or probably if you fail to go for training, the person, I would say that person will go redundant. You will never learn new things. So the more I acquire this knowledge, the more it helps my brain, the more it helps my passion, the more it helps the fire, what I want to be, the more it gives me the opportunity to pursue my dream, even if you don't have money. I will say one thing, thanks to the Humanitarian Leadership Academy, their courses are free of charge. We have more than 100 courses that are being offered by the HLA, whereby you can get a lot of career paths, whereby you can get a lot of understanding. These are the courses I took, trainings, and lots like that. And it gives me, burning to learn more, to go more for it. So if you just believe you just want to stay without doing anything, you can't achieve. You feel bored, you feel tired. And also, do not forget, volunteer, network with people. When you network, the more you network with people, the more you will understand what is happening. You can't sit down at home and you expect the fire to be, but no, go online. The social media is there, the LinkedIn is there, the Zoom is there, webinars are there. It gives a lot of opportunities. Just ensure you are in the right path. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Also, it's kind of for you, it's almost kind of that constant learning and curiosity that kind of enables you to maintain your momentum, I guess. Does anyone else want to come in on that?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in and thanks, Shagun, for really highlighting. I think probably all three of us are kind of unrepentant learners, so that definitely is key to keeping you motivated. I think I'll bring it now to the part of the personal or the self-care of the peace builder. And this is actually one of the projects I'm working on, which is a rubric on self-care for peace builders. That's kind of like a toolkit. And that's another story for another day. But I think one thing is to think about celebrating the little wins, because you will always, always have these things that are beyond you. And you think about theories like the 15% of local action. There's only about 15% of the world around you that you can actually influence. most of it is out of your control, and even much more so as a peace builder. Whether you're talking from higher level, to even grassroots level, there are things that will be beyond you, always will be. And I think I mentioned it as one of the challenges that while building peace and working, say, with someone in Kyrgyzstan, I get the news of something has happened in my own country. So you will get that from time to time. Even where you see progress, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. You have to celebrate the little wins and ensure that those who you're working with in implementation, whether you're mentoring, you're supporting, you're training, whatever it is, that you are celebrating those little wins with them and helping them understand that they are all bits and pieces to the bigger picture. We are talking about decades of work. Toufik was speaking about conflicts. We know conflicts who are even older than some of us on this call, violent conflict. And so you have to always remember that you celebrate the little wins, consolidate them, share them, and you also have to practice self-care as a peace builder, especially if you have the passion, which is what hopefully took you there in the first place. It will affect you. So you need to practice self-care, whatever support systems that are needed, engage with them, resources, online colleagues, support groups, whatever it is, and also consult, ask people themselves what they think about it, how they feel, because sharing sometimes lifts part of the burden itself. So those are just some tips I was thinking. What about you?
Thanks. Yeah, those are really kind of wise tips for almost for life in general as well, but very especially for peace building. Toufik, did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, a small point I wanted to add on what Olu and Safiya said. So in a way, the long life learning, and I think it's an important part, and this professional development is essential, and lots of organizations are providing opportunities today, like the Humanitarian Academy. The Center of Competence as well is very engaged into this. But I think in addition to that, there's an essential point, which is the peer learning. We all know that the model of learning, that the 10% is the formal learning or classroom and etc., but the 70% of our learning impact is exchanging with people, interacting with people in the workplace, and etc. And developing community of practice is an essential parameter for the learning and for the development of all the actors in this field. The community of practice, for example, for us, we have this 8,000 people that have free capacity and possibility to develop learning moment for them in exchanging, in learning from each other and bringing their own experience and bringing the failure as well, not only the little wins, but failure is also an important option in terms of learning and development, or and accepting to recognize it is a key thing, and that give us also, that help us cutting some slacks to ourselves in terms of self-care, like Safiya has been saying. So all these are very important parameters or factors to our development and learning, and in maintaining that passion and fire in terms of peace building. Thank you.
That's really interesting. So it's kind of yeah, almost like collective learning and sharing as a kind of, in a way, a therapy as well as the learning itself, a kind of group therapy and support network by the sounds of it. Interesting. Let me just have a look whether we have more questions in the Q&A. So another thing that I was interested in talking about is to do with soft skills. I think somebody mentioned soft skills earlier. And I always find that just anyway a really fascinating term, because I often think that those soft skills are actually the really tricky ones to articulate what they are, but to pin them down and to really develop those skills is actually quite difficult. It's not about just kind of like learning information. It's not kind of a technical thing. It's something that's quite difficult to pin down. And Safiya, you talked earlier about those developing those competencies, and I know Toufik, you're also involved in training. And I just wondered, like, how would you advise somebody to go about developing those types of soft skills that are required to be a peace builder? You know, all the things that you've talked about around, you know, patience, like the ability to communicate with all kinds of different people, that is an obligatory part of being a peace builder. Any thoughts about that?
Toufik, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, my mic was on. Sorry. Look, I think there's a lot of connection with our daily life, and being a peace builder is about being aware about my interpersonal relation with my partner, with my friends, with my colleagues. There's a lot of things in this. Our daily life is where we can learn a lot in this, and the soft skills. For me, it's always about changing the angle of the way you see things. Trying to find another more lateral approach in analyzing the situation rather than being very too classical in this, and giving space for new ways of thinking. That's the first setup of, if I may bring the concept that Safiya talked about, the growth mindset is also there, which is basically being open to new ways of thinking, new approaches. Yeah, so if we don't have that flexibility, we lose a lot in this. And yeah, that's what we teach at CCHN, is really to try to look what is behind the first level of what you see, and trying to put yourself in the shoes of your counterpart, understanding where they come from, their reasoning, why do they reason like this. We have something that we call the iceberg of negotiation. It's really about understanding what is below the surface, what you see at the top of the iceberg, but there's a lot of things in terms of reasoning and in terms of values. So accepting this, understanding this, and then engaging in the conversation to put that on the table, what you have identified, and showing that you understand what comes from the reasoning. That builds that trust and that relationship that is sustainable with the different actors. Yeah, that would be my parenthesis on this. Yeah, Safiya, maybe, sorry.
No, it's fine. I was gonna say, yeah, when you figure it out, let me know. So, soft skills, it is a tough one, and so the soft competencies. But I think, in addition to what Toufik has said, I guess this is more on the technical side of actually building soft skills, is to be able to articulate what that looks like in practice. So, for example, what would even say patience, okay, look like in a certain situation? And again, it's a bit more technical where you start to talk about, you know, indicators, what that looks like, how do you get there? But essentially, it's a process that's called visioning, where you see the envisioned future that you want, and you think about where you are now. And the question is, how do you close the gap? And sometimes this is where the need for a mentor, as Segun mentioned before, or other kinds of resources come into play. But I think generally, and you know, peace building itself is a lot about soft skills, actually. It's a lot about people having capacity. It's not go sit down and talk to that person. No, it's about the soft skills. How can I trust? How can I talk to this person when I think or feel that this person is basically not even human? It's not someone I should be talking to, and so on and so forth. It's all about change of attitudes, not, you know, and behaviors. So when you speak about these things, you look at where you want to go, you look at where you are now, and figure out in between. And this is where you sometimes need the guidance, ask for help. But I think generally, whether even hard or soft skills, practice is key. You have to be able to practice it. And so yes, I've envisioned what I want it to look like, but and I know what I need to get there, but you have to apply it as well. And it comes with time. Just like peace building comes with time. Just like, you know, the soft skill of influencing, for example, comes with time. You will never be able to know how to influence people if you do not speak and bring out your points and understand what is of interest to that person, and to be able to connect those dots together. So, number one, envisioning, right? Applying processes like visioning, applying the and utilizing mentors and other kinds of resources to help you go from what you know, or what you don't know rather, to what you know. And that's the steps of that competence model, where you go from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like this is almost quite a philosophical discussion in a way as well. I mean, even as someone that doesn't work in peace building, I feel like there's quite a lot that you can take from this, just in terms of how you live your life and how you go about your work. So it's very interesting to hear those things. I think we'll go to one last question just to end on a kind of nice positive note. It would be really interesting to hear from each of you whether there's kind of one particular moment that stands out to you in your career as a time when you've really felt that impact has been there, or that you've really felt satisfied with something that you've worked on either yourself or with a group of people. Yeah, that would be really interesting to know from each of you. Who wants to go first? It's difficult now, isn't it? Because you have to think of something.
Okay, I'll go first.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. I think when I really get happy, or I would say excited during the course of my career, was when I was a Teach for Nigerian fellow in an underserved community where a lot of children do not have the ability to communicate and to write properly in English. And, during that time, I was teaching in the primary school where children from, low income communities. And with my efforts in supporting them in knowing how to write and how to read, at the end of the term, out of, I would say 100%, 80% were able to read and write properly. I was happy because this is what I was looking for. This is the expectation as a teacher, and this, elicits me that, yes, I will do more onto these children, in the next coming term. So I was happy that, yes, this is the result. This is what I want to see, even with the whole, lack of resources, due to, the low income communities, poor background, but with the little resources, I still give the impact to these children. So this is one of my key moments as a peace builder and also a humanitarian person. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting to think how much of kind of peace is also premised on the people having the things that they need in their lives, things like education that you're talking about, or, not living in poverty, I guess must in itself be a real investment in peace as well. Who wants to go next? Everyone's
I
being
just
too
raised
polite.
my eyebrows. This is such a difficult question, and I'm pretty
sorry.
sure. Thanks a lot, Esther. But I'm pretty sure that, I mean, I can probably say all of us are going to speak of impact-related incidents where you have made a difference. And honestly, I cannot pick one, but I think generally what I can say is that every time I've been in the field, particularly, so whether that's been in Asia, in Africa, even in North America or anywhere else that it's been conflict affected, okay? The fact when you get into it and you see people who ordinarily would not talk to one another, who would not engage with one another, and you watch the process. For example, we've had trainings where in Europe, and you had, I don't know, about 15 countries, and some of those representatives, volunteers from those countries, and you have them from beginning sitting aside, refusing to engage with one another, and you go through the entire training camp, and you go through that all the processes, and bit by bit they're exposing them one to another. The groups dynamics are happening, and by the end of the training you have them partying together. You have them exchanging numbers and engaging, and that has happened both on a local level and an international level in the course of my work. And it is so fulfilling to see that, even in the space of sustainable development with empowering women or with Generations for Peace or anywhere else that I've worked. Just seeing that shift is life-changing. And really, honestly, that's what makes you keep going on, because you know you are making a difference. Yes, you may not be on the international news, but you know you are making a difference through what you're doing. Over to you, Toufik.
Yeah, thank you very much, Safiya. I would maybe bring the learning aspect in this, in training actors or peace builder more than beneficiary. And this experience also is a very, how to say, valuable for me throughout the different workshops we provide and the training of facilitators specifically at some moment. It's just a very secluded workshop where we have maximum of 12 people. But that's very intense for 4 days, where we engage into transmitting knowledge, transmitting methodology, and etc., and using our daily life competences out there to try to be able to do it. And they come back and they say, yeah, this course has changed my life, or it made me really progress in the way I work in the field, and etc. Because what we've been told during the training of facilitator is also, and I'm thinking about the on-site Oluwasegun. I hope one day you will join this workshop on-site. We have done it online, which is a short version. But they go back and say that, yeah, what they have learned is also useful for them in the way they interact with others, in the way they present things, in the way. So yeah, it's a very, it's rewarding to hear these people saying that it has an impact on them, the methodology, etc. Yeah, so I want to go forward. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Yeah, and this has been a really interesting discussion, I have to say. I mean, I feel like I've learned so much from this, from somebody that doesn't know much at all about this area. It's just been really insightful and just really interesting to hear about what you do. So thank you for that. And I'm sure that the participants are thinking the same thing. So really appreciate you agreeing to come and talk to our audience. I'm just going to do a quick plug for future webinars. So we've got another one coming up on the 10th of June. This is a very different topic, but it's somebody that works in our learning and development team. He's an expert on digital learning. Who's going to be talking about some of the kind of technological innovations that they are testing in their team. And he's going to be talking those through, and it's going to be quite interactive as well. So you'll get to have a chance to have a go on some of those things. So very different topic, but maybe of interest to somebody in this audience too. We also have one coming up where our team, along with a partner, Klonjawar, are going to be presenting a piece of research that they've conducted looking at social organisations and civil society organisations that are supporting refugees in Poland. So as you can imagine, in connection with the Ukraine response, there was a huge influx of funding and support for those organisations. And now they've done a recent piece of research to look at what that support looks like going into the future, and how those organisations can continue to operate and continue to provide that support to refugees. So that should be really interesting as well. I've put some contact details here so that you can look up the organisations involved. I'll be sending out the slides, so you'll get a follow-up email with the slides, and also with a handout. We do kind of a very short handout with some of the key points from the webinars, and also linking to resources that the speakers share with us as well. So we'll put a few links on there to some of the items that they've mentioned today. And you'll also receive a digital badge as well if you've attended today. So thanks once again to our three speakers. This has been a brilliant discussion. and I've really enjoyed it. And thanks to everybody in the audience for joining, and we hope that we'll see you at another one soon. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
It was a
Bye,
pleasure.
everyone.